Hey guys, what's up? I hope you're having a wonderful day. I just got back from a trip to Zion National Park in Utah, and oh my gosh, it was just gorgeous. However, I was a little bit bummed because I was really hoping to be able to film at least one video, hopefully two for you guys over there. But I just got so busy with all the filming that I was doing over there for a wedding, and I hiked the Narrows one of the day, which was one of my biggest priorities. But I wound up not really making a vlog out of it like I was expecting, just because the river was so loud and it was just crowded as I was walking through the river. So I won't be sharing videos with you guys live from the scene. However, I'm sharing lots of my shots on Instagram, so I hope you guys give me a follow on Instagram at Jeremy Knipe if you aren't already, and you can see all the pictures I took over this past week at Zion, mostly landscape, some wildlife. But please don't forget to check out my Instagram if you haven't already. If you give me a follow, shoot me a direct message with your favorite landscape photo you've ever taken, and I'm going to be sharing on my story this week a landscape photo from one of you guys that I think is my favorite that was sent to me throughout the week. And so send me your best landscape photos. I'll be sharing them on my Instagram stories, and I'd love to see that photo either if you just share that post with me or send me the photo through direct message on Instagram. So today we're going to be looking at this photo right here of Watchman in Zion. So you'll see the before and after is just drastically different. However, all this was done in Lightroom, so none of this is photoshopped. Today we're going to be walking through how we transformed this photo of Watchman in Zion National Park into the beauty that I just showed you guys a second ago. So first of all, typically what I like to start off with is this tone curve right here in all my images, because this really lays out the foundation for how this is going to appear. So we can see there's a very high peak in the blacks right here, so I'm just going to mark it right before and kind of leave an anchor point right there and bring this up here. And what this does, the reason why I do this with a lot of my photos, and this is kind of one of my styles, is that it kind of helps with the noise in the shadows, first of all. So I like how clean it breaks out the noise from being. Not that there's a lot of noise in this photo in the first place, because it's shot at, I think, 200 ISO you can see up here. However, it just helps soften that out. But also with the depth of field, I just kind of like the appearance it gives it. It gives the shadows not such harsh feelings as if they're being hit by direct sun. And I really like that about doing this technique with a lot of my photos. So probably about 90% of my photos, I kind of throw up that tone at the end with an anchor and then boosting up that on the bottom side. However, one thing that I already know about this photo is that this is pretty bright. The sky is pretty bright. And so what we're going to do is in this highlight section where you see a lot of that sky coming through, we're just going to crank that down a little bit too. That way we're going to wind up getting a nicer matched color exposure to the sky as opposed to the mountain. So we've got a good layout down with the tone curve already. But obviously this whole image as a whole is too dark. So we're going to go back up here to the tone. And we're first going to adjust this exposure upwards. So I'm probably going to adjust it to somewhere maybe around here. And that'll just kind of increase the whole histogram, move it to the right. You can see if I go back, as opposed to now, kind of just moved everything directly up. And that's going to give us a better base for where we can run our exposure out of. Now next I'm going to be looking into the highlights. And the reason why I like to do the highlights next is I like to get the highlights and shadows balanced in a good spectrum on the histogram. That way I can use my contrast, my whites and my blacks to adjust the fine looks of the exposures. However, the highlights and the shadows really move them into the correct areas in general. So we'll start with these highlights, cranking them down quite a bit, probably to around here. Because I don't want the sky to be too bright as opposed to the mountain when we get the final product. And then the shadows I'm going to throw up a lot. Let's see. We're going to throw them up maybe to like here. And obviously right now this looks pretty ugly, but it's already even looking a little bit better than at first. So we have the shadows that we threw up, the highlights we threw down. Now this is in a more equal and balanced range on the histogram to where we can really edit this up now dynamically. And we have exposure to work with rather than if this part of the mountain was still way down here. If we were to adjust the contrast in that, a lot of that would just fall directly off the histogram. So this looks really nice like this to start with. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the contrast to help with the dynamic look of the whole photo. So we'll adjust it maybe up to there. And what that does is kind of just across the whole histogram, you can see kind of just spreads it out a little bit more, helps increase the contrast just within the curves themselves. However, it's still looking pretty flat. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to increase the whites a little bit. That'll just help pop the mountain a little bit more, the color on the mountain where the sun was kind of shining through the clouds, or the clouds themselves, just kind of help pops those really hot highlights a little bit more, as you can see the difference there. And lastly, I'm going to do the blacks, and this is pretty important for me in this photo because right now, actually, just to show you, like right now we have a very flat image in the shadows. So these blacks, when we crank them down, what it'll do is just pull the very bottom end down out more, stretch it out more. That way we get a more realistic and natural look in those shadows, and it's not just completely a flat image and very grayed out image. So pull those down probably to about there. You can see just a drastic difference in how the shadows look between these two images, there and there. So I'm liking how this is looking so far. However, it still has a very long way to go. The next most important thing I would say, and typically what I do next in my editing, is I'm going to get the coloring right, because this color is obviously very cool. And when I shot this image, it was warmer in the sky, and just the way that the camera was able to capture this image just wasn't good at the moment. The lighting was changing very quick, and so I want to make sure that I can get the best color balance to this photo that I can. When you shoot in RAW, this is something that's so important about shooting in RAW, is if the white balance is slightly off, you're able to adjust it without any poor color tweaks to it. Whereas if you don't shoot in RAW and you try to adjust these color temperatures drastically, you're going to get a very different looking color. So we'll start with this color temperature right here, and we're going to throw it up quite a bit because it was much warmer than, let's see, much warmer than what it's kind of showing the shot. So we'll throw it up to around there, and already, it's going from, whoopsie, right there, looking very cold to looking much more like a sunset here. However, it's still tinted very green. So what we need to do next is adjust this tint up, because it looks way too green right now. So we'll adjust it up maybe to about there. And you'll notice it just gives so much more of the accuracy of what a sunset and a sunrise actually looks like, as opposed to that greenish color. So I'm liking how that's looking. Gonna need some fine tweaks for sure though still. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go to this Vibrance and Saturation tab. And typically, I don't adjust these as drastically as I'm about to adjust them. But as you kind of saw from the original image, a lot of this was so underexposed at the beginning that we're going to have to do a lot of bringing out the colors in here, because this was so underexposed. But I had to do that in order to get the exposure okay on the sky. And I did the best I could to balance between the two while I was kind of there on set live. What Vibrance kind of does is it'll kind of just, with all the colors, it'll try to bring them to an equal amount of color to them, versus Saturation just kind of directly moves the colors that already exist upwards. So with Saturation, these blues just get way more blue, for example, and so on and so forth, whereas this will kind of cap it out at a certain level and then just try to even everything out. So we're actually going to leave the Vibrance much higher here because of the difference in the exposures here. We want the color as a whole to kind of be adjusted to a reasonable level, not way oversaturated, only on certain areas. And next, we're going to take that saturation, and we're going to move up the saturation just a little bit, not too much, but probably about to there, and it'll give a nice color to the photo. Now next, we still have some weird looking colors and colors that aren't quite represented as good as I would hope in this photo. So we're going to look at this HSL color and split toning tabs. So we'll start with the split toning. And what I'm going to do here is, because the sky we want it to keep a little bit of that cooler color and not adjust so warm as down here. We're going to adjust the shadows to be a much warmer hue, just slightly, and adjust the highlights to be a cooler hue. So we'll move these highlights, let's see, maybe out to around here or so. And we're just going to throw a little bit of saturation into that. So maybe we'll put that at around 7. And you can see that it's just helping keep this sky a little bit more like a purplish sunset blue color. And then with these shadows, we'll just move these shadows just slightly this way. And then we're going to put the saturation up a little bit on this. And you can see that helps kind of preserve the red and orangeness of Zion National Park. That if you guys have ever seen pictures of Zion National Park before, you've noticed just how red and how orange that rock is. And that's really one of the highlights about being in Utah in general, but Zion National Park itself. So that's how we do that split toning there, to just kind of help keep the colors warmer down here as the camera wasn't capturing, and a little bit cooler and purpley up here as a sunset would actually represent. And lastly, we're going to get into this HSL and color. we're going to go to this luminance tab. And one of the problems I have with this is it doesn't feel very bright. And part of that was for the reason of the sun not hitting directly on the mountains as much as I wanted. So that was something I was a little bit bummed about when I was shooting there, is that there was a cloud actually off to the right of the image that was kind of blocking and forecasting a shadow over a lot of the mountains. So we kind of had a little bit of the sun's rays coming through, but diffused because of the clouds in front of it. So I want to kind of pop this a little bit more, give it a little bit more life to it. So we're going to increase this luminance a little bit on the red, maybe about like that. Increase it mostly on the orange, which will really help. And you'll see just even immediately just on that how much that popped the rock faces of this and really gave it a lot more color to it. Not color necessarily, but those brights that you would see as if a sun was hitting it almost. So back and forth between those two. That looks very nice. And we're going to decrease the blues just a little bit because the sky's already feeling pretty bright. So that helps bring down the sky color as well, not so overexposed. Then we're going to increase these purples a little bit just to help draw out a little bit of that, the light and the shadows, just the same way as the wall. Trying to imagine that hit more by a brighter sun in the purples and the clouds. We kind of get that same effect by adjusting that. And lastly, we're going to look to the saturation. We're going to adjust this up a little bit. We're going to adjust the reds up a little bit, oranges up a little bit, and get a little bit more color down here because naturally, since it was underexposed in the raw image, you're not getting as much color down here in the image, and you kind of have to make up for that a lot in editing. So overall, this is looking like a pretty good image, probably very close to what I actually edited up and already put on my website and Instagram and all of that good stuff. But I hope you guys like this. And I hope this helped you out in terms of your editing. And let's take a look at the before and after pictures. So this is what we had before we decided to edit it. And this is what we have after the editing is all done. So I cannot stress how important editing your photos is when you're shooting raw. And if you're not shooting raw, you're losing so much of what your camera's capable for. If you're not shooting raw, you're kind of missing out on really what you're paying the big bucks for. And it's sometimes winds up not being much better than an iPhone shot, when it's just so compressed and all of that stuff, especially when it comes to landscape photography. So I really encourage you guys to shoot in RAW and edit your favorite images. Don't go through and editing all your images because that's going to take you years if you're just kind of like a hobby photographer. But edit up your favorite ones. It's really worth the time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give me a follow on Instagram and send me your favorite landscape photography shot. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Don't forget to subscribe below. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.